I recently talked to a subscriber about the use of slugs for bear defense. I've been wanting to do a new video about slugs and sabots for a while now, so I figured I might as well do it now, and hopefully it may help some people. Let's begin with a brief summary of some slugs and their performance. First of all, we have a Cape buffalo killed with a single Brennicky slug. This next one is actually a rifle round. It's a grizzly that was killed with a broadside shot with a .350 Legend Hornady interlock round. This bullet exited the bear. Third, we have a grizzly sow killed with a quartering away shot from a 12 gauge 325 grain Hornady interlock sabot. This round also exited the bear. Fourth, we have a defensive black bear shooting. This involved 3 Winchester Super X 1-ounce slugs being shot into the bear's shoulder. Only one of those slugs just barely managed to make it into the vitals of the bear. This person also later shot one of those slugs into ballistics gel and found that it had only 14.5 inches of penetration. Finally, we have a black bear that was shot in the center of the chest with a reduced recoil Hornady SST sabot. It penetrated through the entire bear and exited out the right thigh. There are some more things that I should mention though. One person talks about the classic Brennicky slug, and he has found that it will go through both shoulders of a deer inside 50 yards. However, when the range increases, penetration decreases. Shoulder shots outside of 50 yards generally result in a lack of exit, to the point that at 75 yards, you may only break a single shoulder on a deer. Someone I know who has also used Brennicky slugs for deer has also said that this is a fair assessment. We also have a case of a 6-foot black bear that was shot lengthwise with a Brennicky, giving 18 to 20 inches of penetration and breaking some bones. This happened at 6 yards, and the slug was found underneath the skin near the last rib. We also have another person who mentions that with the standard soft-lead Foster-style slugs, they will not fatally penetrate the skull or neck of a big Hereford bull at 50 yards. And as part of a review of the Brennicky 3-inch Magnum Crush round, one person said that they will penetrate through both the shoulders of wild hogs at 50 yards. These are the results of some shotgun slugs that were shot into pine boards to test their penetration. Aside from the slugs in the picture, there are some others that I didn't include pictures of. These are the ones that don't have the numbers next to them, and they are listed below. When we look at the results, it's clear that the soft-lead Federal True Ball had more penetration than the Brennicky slugs. The reason why this happened is because the True Ball deformed and became very round. This very rounded shape let it penetrate much deeper. The Brennicky, on the other hand, mostly kept its shape. The same is true for non-expanding rifle bullets as well. The round-nosed ones will penetrate farther in wood than the flat-nosed ones will. The reason that soft-lead slugs don't do so well on bone in actual animals largely has to do with the fact that there is flesh in front of and behind the bone. The flesh makes the slug expand and encounter far more resistance due to its greater surface area. In comparison, if you have a Brennicky or Challenger slug that has little or no expansion in flesh, they encounter much less resistance and travel deeper. Obviously, wood is not bone, but it'd be next to impossible to find a bunch of uniform pieces of bone to test penetration through in this manner. It'd be much better to use polyurethane bone substitute, but that's not the kind of thing that you can usually find at your hardware store. Anyway, it seems that by far the round with the most penetration was the Challenger slug, which is made by a Canadian company. Its fairly pointed design seems to be what caused it to outperform other slugs like the copper-plated Federal True Ball and the Brennickys. I would also say that the LBC sabot is very similar to the Challenger in its pointed shape. In the charts I'll show you later about penetration in water jugs and ballistics gel, they'll demonstrate that the LBC sabot has an enormous amount of penetration in water jugs. So from the evidence I have now, I'm going to say that a pointed, non-expanding slug or sabot will probably have the best penetration in both bone and flesh. Challenger slugs have a high amount of antimony, making them pretty hard, and the pictures shown before demonstrated that they don't significantly deform in pine. I would also say that some people have had good success with light field slugs on black bear. However, if you told me you plan to use them for defense against really big bears, I'd say that's a very dangerous thing to do. Another person mentions that most foster slugs are soft lead and they expand too much, and this results in too little penetration. This problem is particularly bad with light field slugs, and he has witnessed 3 bears shot with such slugs, both in 20 and in 12 gauge. All 3 bears had good shot placement, yet still resulted in little blood loss, and the bears were not recovered. In comparison, he has used 20 gauge Brennekes on black bears with excellent results. Now, this is about all the penetration data I could find from different shotgun rounds. I also want to point out something important. Winchester Super X slugs can break or fragment in water and ballistics gelatin, but seem to not do that in wood or plywood. Super X slugs also give poor penetration on actual bears for similar reasons. This demonstrates that the major problem that they have is that they expand too much in flesh and water before they even hit thick bone. The video I made about soft lead buckshot and slugs failing to penetrate and kill tigers and other animals also proves this point. Unless your ammunition has good penetration through flesh, it may be too expanded or fragmented to penetrate through thick bone. So in short, Winchester Super X and the standard velocity Federal Tactical True Ball slug should both be avoided. I would also avoid any slug that breaks up or has poor penetration in water jugs or ballistics gel. If you look near the top of the chart on the right, the Hornady 325 grain interlock sabot only penetrated 3 jugs. And we know that round can penetrate through and exit a grizzly sow with a quartering away shot. There are obviously many rounds that have more penetration than the interlock sabot, and would probably do better when they encounter thick bone, like shoulders or legs as a result. I included water jug testing as well in this video because from what I have seen and calculated, a single 1-gallon water jug is equivalent to about 4 inches of ballistics gel. And if you compare the standard Remington Slugger to the managed recoil version, you'll notice that the managed recoil rounds have much more penetration due to their lack of expansion. Likewise, the Federal Tactical True Ball rounds, the low recoil version has much more penetration, but still manages to have good expansion. I'd like to remind you that just because a slug has more velocity than another one does not make it better. In most cases, higher velocity results in more expansion and less penetration. Velocity would be more of a concern if more distance is involved, but that would be more of a benefit for something like deer hunting over open ground instead of bear defense at close range. Brenneke slugs are always recommended as the best round for bear defense because of their high penetration and harder lead, which gives the shooter more confidence in their ability to penetrate through thick bone. However, any sabot or slug that doesn't overexpand or fragment has a good chance, not a guarantee of course, of penetrating through both flesh and thick bone. Even the somewhat lacking standard 2 3/4 inch Super X slug has pretty good penetration into the fresh heads of yearling steers. Granted, these shots were at pretty close range and not angled at all. These are a few more slugs that Brenneke has tested. There is always the chance that Brenneke would show some bias and make their slugs look better than the competitors. However, I would say that these numbers seem to be pretty accurate to me. In a previous video, I mentioned that the light field slugs have some problems with penetration on game, and this is also quite evident when they are shot into gelatin. I guess this isn't really a problem anymore though, because light field isn't making hunting ammunition anymore. Shooting plywood or wood does tell us some things. However, I want to stress the fact that if you intend to test ammunition to see how well it does on actual animals, you had better put some water jugs or ballistics gel in front of the wood or plywood first. That way the wood or plywood can represent bone of some sort. One of the things that we can learn is that even though a Federal 1 1/4 ounce slug has more energy and sectional density, it's not guaranteed to penetrate more than a 1 ounce Remington slug. The Remington actually penetrated more, and the reason for this is fairly obvious. The Federal slug had more deformation than the Remington did. Whether this was due to softer lead or just chance, we can't really say without more testing. What we can say for sure is that Brennicky mentions that they use harder lead in all of their slugs, so basically any Brennicky slug is going to perform well. People may also say that you can use steel slugs, which I suppose you could, but I seriously doubt that anyone can find such rounds available on store shelves. And if steel slugs have any practical advantage over Brennickys in real-world use, I'd like to see some evidence for that before I believe it.